Hello, sleepy dreamer. How you doing? Tonight I'll be your guide, here to ease you into calm, restful sleep. Before we get started, remember to like the video and subscribe so you won't miss future scary bedtime stories. Share in the comments where you're tuning in from and what time it is. Also, let me know if there's a story you'd love to hear next. I wasn't searching for romance when I left my parents' home and signed a lease on a single-bedroom apartment in the East Bay. At 22, I was working full-time as a plumber for a modest family-run company out of Oakland. Life finally seemed to be balancing out. I had steady paychecks, peaceful evenings, and the freedom I'd longed for since graduating high school. My name is Daniel Reyes, and I'll never forget the events of that summer. It began like any ordinary workday. It was mid-June, oppressively hot even before 9 a.m. I had an appointment in Berkeley to repair a set of leaky pipes inside an old Mediterranean-style house. The job wasn't complicated at all, but I remember it vividly because that was the first time I met Claire. She was 22 as well, just a few months older than me. The house belonged to her parents, easygoing, kind people, but she was the one who opened the door. She wore a worn-out Led Zeppelin shirt, her hair tied into a loose bun, no makeup, yet she still looked like she'd stepped straight out of a photo shoot. She handed me a glass of water, lingered nearby, asking about my tools, the kind of places I worked, whether I had anyone in my life. At the time, I didn't, and I assumed she was just making small talk. But when she scribbled her number on the corner of an old receipt and slipped it into my hand with a grin, I realized she meant it. We started texting that night. Soon after, one thing turned into another. Within a week, we were going out, and just 2 months later, she was living with me. It all unfolded quickly. Too quickly when I look back, though at the time it felt intoxicating. I'd never met anyone like her. She was lively, spontaneous, endlessly playful. She'd leave notes tucked into my lunch bag, send me candid photos through the day, cook elaborate dinners by the time I got home. But gradually that energy shifted, and what once felt exciting began to feel suffocating. The first warning sign came at a small taco stand in Emory. We were eating outside when a text from my coworker Martin popped up about a change in the job schedule. Claire's eyes locked on my screen and her whole body tensed. "Who's Lacey?" she asked. "What? Lacey?" I was confused. "The girl who sent you that heart emoji last week. I saw it when you were scrolling Instagram." I laughed, assuming she was teasing. "She's my cousin from Portland." But she didn't smile. She folded her arms and just glared. "Relax," I said. "It's nothing." That night she shut down completely. By morning I discovered she had erased over 30 people from my contacts, old classmates, coworkers, even my cousin. She didn't deny it. "They're distractions," she said. I should have ended things right then, but I convinced myself she was just protective. I'd never lived with a partner before. Maybe this was normal. It wasn't. Soon her outbursts spilled into public. Once at a Target, I lingered too long near electronics. She yanked me out by the arm, screaming in the parking lot that I'd been staring at the cashier. Another time at a friend's barbecue, she accused my best friend's fiancé of coming onto me simply because she laughed at one of my jokes. She'd cry, slam things, destroy whatever was nearby, then whisper apologies afterward. "I only act this way because I love you so much. Please don't leave me, Danny." After 3 months, I couldn't bear it. I told her I needed space, that I felt on edge all the time, constantly bracing for her reactions. She looked at me like she didn't understand English. Then she hurled a glass against the wall, locked herself in the bathroom for hours, and finally emerged eerily calm. "Okay," she said, "I'll go." She packed slowly, clearly hoping I'd stop her. I didn't. She kissed me on the cheek before leaving. That should have been the end, but it wasn't. The stalking began the next night. At 2 a.m. I heard stones tapping against my window. When I stepped outside, there was no one, only a crumpled note shoved under the mat. "You said you'd never leave me." That entire week I saw her car parked at the end of my block every night, engine off, her figure inside, staring toward my building. Whenever I called the police, she was gone before they arrived. 2 weeks later, I returned home to find her barefoot in my kitchen, sipping from one of my mugs as if she belonged there. I froze. "How did you get in?" She smiled. "You never changed the locks, Dan. You forgot I have a key." I forced myself to stay calm, said I was tired, asked her to leave. She did. But 2 days later I found words written across my walls. At first pencil, "Come back." Then in permanent red marker, "I'll never release you." Soon it escalated further. She had carved open her arms and scrawled my name in blood across the bathroom tiles. Police came, photographed everything, took a report. But because I hadn't physically caught her breaking in, they said their hands were tied. That night I replaced the locks and installed a security system. But Claire wasn't finished. She turned up at my parents' house in Richmond. One night at 1:30 a.m., my mom woke to tapping on her window and found Claire standing there, tapping the glass with a kitchen knife, smiling silently. My mom nearly collapsed in terror. My dad called police, but again she vanished before they showed up. That broke me. I stayed at my parents' place, silenced my phone, even skipped work for a week. I was drained, constantly afraid. I filed for a restraining order, but the process dragged on. The last night changed everything. It was 2:13 a.m. I remember the exact time because I checked my phone when I heard the sound. Tap, 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 on my bedroom window. I pulled back the curtain, and there she was, Claire, pale, gaunt, her eyes sunken, lips curled into a wide grin. She didn't blink. "Come out," she whispered, voice clear as day. My chest tightened. I rushed out the front door shaking and yelled, "Claire, this has to stop. Stay away from me and my family." She stood frozen. Then she let out a piercing scream, high-pitched, broken, before charging me with a knife in hand. Instinct took over. I swung, striking her jaw hard. She crumpled to the pavement, unconscious. I dialed 911, shouting into the phone until officers arrived. They arrested her on the spot. Inside her bra, they found my old house key, photos of me, strands of my hair, even a torn envelope with my address circled in red ink. It was like living inside a nightmare. She was sentenced to 5 years in a psychiatric correctional institution after being declared unstable and dangerous, ordered into long-term treatment due to her record of self-harm, stalking, and violent behavior. We relocated immediately. My parents sold their home. I left the East Bay, changed my phone, my car, everything. I now live in San Diego, working for a different plumbing outfit. The apartment is quiet, my circle small, no relationships. But I still wake up some nights to faint tapping. Even if it's only the branches scratching glass, I always check, because Claire's sentence will end in less than 2 years, and I know she hasn't forgotten me. I don't believe she ever will. I never thought stepping into a relationship would eventually leave me terrified for my freedom, my well-being, and even my sanity. My name is Daniel Ross. I'm 26 now, married, and a father to 2 kids I adore. But 6 years ago, my world was chaos. At the time, I was 20, working endless shifts as a mechanic at a garage just outside of Raleigh, North Carolina. I had just moved out of my parents' home, finally trying to create a life of my own. That's when I met Marissa. In the beginning, she felt like a dream. She was 22, smart, striking, and deeply passionate about singing. We met during an open mic night at a cafe downtown. She sang. While I had fixed a crackling soundboard that evening, she thought that was impressive. I thought she was magnetic. For the first few months, things were great. Better than great. She would surprise me at the shop with lunch. We spent long nights binging true crime shows, and she had this way of making me feel like no one else mattered. Looking back, I realize now that wasn't love. It was control. The first warning sign appeared barely 3 months into dating. I had made plans to watch a movie with my friend Jordan, someone I'd known since middle school. When I mentioned it to Marissa, she froze, then suddenly burst into tears, loud sobbing like she'd just lost someone. "What's wrong?" I asked. "You'd rather be with him than me?" she whispered. "It's just a movie, babe. You and I have been together every night this week. I'll be home in 2 hours. She never responded, just sat there staring at the floor, tears dripping down her cheeks. After that night, I stopped seeing Jordan. Not because he disappeared, but because I stopped answering. It wasn't always that dramatic. Sometimes it was subtle. She'd twist everything until I felt guilty. If I didn't text back fast enough, it became proof that I didn't care. If I came home 5 minutes late, she'd accuse me of cheating. At first, I tried to comfort her. Then I ignored it. Then I started lying just to avoid her explosions. Somewhere along the way, I realized I was afraid of her. About a year into the relationship, I tried to end things. We were in her apartment one rainy afternoon, and I told her gently, "I don't think this is working anymore." She blinked a few times, then went frighteningly still. "So you're just going to leave me like everyone else?" she asked. "Marissa, I'm not trying to hurt you. I just think we need some space. It's gotten toxic." "Toxic," she scoffed bitterly. "You're the one making it toxic. You make me like this." Then she stormed into the bathroom and slammed the door. I thought she was just venting until I heard a scream. I ran in. She had a razor in her hand and a shallow red mark down her thigh. Not deep, but enough to shake me. "See what you do to me?" she whispered, staring into my eyes, making me feel like the villain. I stayed. Over the next 6 months, I tried to leave her 4 more times. Every attempt ended with her pulling a new trick: panic attacks, suicide threats, even phoning my mother in tears saying I had abandoned her. Once she texted me photos of her wrists covered in marker ink, made to look like blood. I hated myself for staying. I hated who I had become: silent, withdrawn, anxious. She was perfect in public, smiling, sweet. But behind closed doors, she was someone else entirely. Then one day, everything shifted. On a rare day off, I wandered through Briarwood Mall to clear my head and ran into Rachel, an old high school girlfriend. We ended on good terms years back. She was working at a clothing store and spotted me in the food court. We caught up, laughing like old friends. She asked how life had been, and I told her everything. Rachel didn't dismiss me. She didn't say just break up with her. She looked me dead in the eyes and said, "Daniel, she's emotionally abusing you. If you don't get out, she'll take everything from you. And if you're worried she'll hurt herself, tell someone. Don't carry that weight alone." Her words stayed with me. I built a plan. One Friday afternoon, while Marissa was at her part-time bakery job, I packed only essentials and called my cousin Luke, who agreed to take me and my 2 dogs in for a while. Then I messaged Marissa, "Can we talk over dinner? I think we need an honest conversation." She agreed. We met at a small Italian restaurant. She seemed nervous but calm. I kept it blunt. "I'm leaving, Marissa. I can't do this anymore. I'm moving out. We both need to grow apart. Please don't hurt yourself over this." She froze. Her smile cracked. "You're serious?" "Yes, you bastard." She stood, tipped her water glass and stormed out. That night I moved in with Luke. My mom called, worried. My dad said little but offered help if things escalated. Luke's girlfriend was nervous about the drama following me, but I promised it was temporary. It wasn't. 2 nights later, pounding shook the door at 3 a.m. It was the police. "Are you Daniel Ross?" "Yes, sir. We have a report from a Miss Marissa Lane. She claims you assaulted her and stole money under threat of a weapon. You need to come with us." I was stunned. They cuffed me without even reading my rights at first. I was dragged downtown, locked in a freezing room under buzzing fluorescent lights while a detective grilled me. "Where were you between 8 and midnight 2 nights ago?" "With my cousin, you can call him. We were gaming." "And you didn't visit Miss Lane's apartment?" "I haven't seen her since dinner. I don't have a key. No weapon." They didn't believe me. She had bruises, a story, and tears. I had an alibi, and eventually DNA testing proved it. But I still spent 2 weeks in county jail. 2 weeks of silence, fear, and staring at blank concrete walls. I didn't cry. I just waited, praying truth still mattered. The results cleared me. Nothing matched. But the damage was done. Marissa wasn't finished. Over the next year, she filed 4 separate restraining orders, each claiming I was stalking her, following her car, sending text from burner phones, leaving dead flowers on her porch. Every time I had proof of innocence, GPS data, receipts, witnesses. Still, the court had to investigate. Once she even hired a private investigator to tail me and Rachel. Yes, we got back together. It nearly destroyed us. Rachel got anonymous threats, her car was keyed, and once she noticed a stranger snapping pictures of her from across the street. The investigator was never caught. Finally, after the 4th restraining order request, one judge had had enough. "This is harassment," he declared. "The petitioner offers no evidence. The respondent has shown consistent, verifiable proof of innocence." That was the last time we ever saw Marissa in court. She disappeared not long after, supposedly moved away. Rachel and I married a few years later. We now have 2 kids, a home, and peace. Real peace. But sometimes, when there's an unexpected knock at the door or a strange car idling outside, I still freeze for a second. My mind goes back to her, to the fear, the manipulation, the way someone can strip away your reality with lies. If you're reading this and stuck in something similar, don't wait for scars or court dates. Get out. Speak up. You deserve safety. And as for Marissa, wherever you are, I hope you find the help you need. And I pray no one else becomes your next victim. I never put faith in the supernatural. Not because I believed I was too rational or clever for such things. It just never touched my life. No cursed mirrors, no disembodied whispers, no glowing eyes hidden in the dark. My existence had been ordinary in the best way. Wake up, have breakfast, ride my bike to classes, finish my part-time shift at the bookstore, then head home. I lived in a quiet town called Ashbourne, nestled along the northern coast of Tasmania. Imagine slow, foggy mornings, streets draped with sagging willow trees, and neighbors who always remembered each other's dogs by name. My father, Daniel Moore, had been a retired history teacher. We lived in a weathered house only a short walk from the shoreline. Life was peaceful, consistent, and safe, until I crossed paths with Evelyn Hart. Evelyn changed everything. We met the summer before my third year at university. I was 20, working nights at a cluttered old second-hand bookshop called Page and Lantern. Evelyn entered one evening wearing a vintage gray coat, black leather boots, and a scarf knotted too tightly for the warm weather. She looked as if she'd stepped out of another decade, maybe the 50s or early 60s. She didn't smile or even glance at me for long. She simply asked, "Do you have anything on lucid dreaming?" Her tone was soft yet unwavering, and for reasons I couldn't identify, I immediately wanted her to linger. Over a few visits, we spoke more. First about dreams, then about music, then about how she despised technology and still carried a flip phone. She was unusual but captivating. After 3 weeks, I asked if she'd like to get coffee. She agreed instantly. That was the beginning. Our first date was unlike anything I had experienced. We strolled beside the water at sunset. Evelyn wasn't much of a talker, but when she spoke, her words carried a weight as if she were already midway through profound thoughts. "I used to sleepwalk," she told me, staring at the current. "My parents would find me outside, just standing there." I laughed, calling it creepy. She met my eyes with unshaken seriousness. It was, something about her held me in place. Maybe the mystery, maybe the loneliness I carried. I hadn't dated since high school, and Evelyn was striking in an old-fashioned sense. Long dark hair, pale complexion, never a trace of makeup, yet she appeared otherworldly. We began spending more time together. She avoided crowded places, no restaurants, no pubs, always quiet parks, abandoned fields, or my house. At first it felt intimate, almost romantic, as if we existed alone in our own world. But over time, strange details began to creep in. Evelyn never allowed me to visit her place. She claimed it was too messy, yet I never even saw a single photo of it. She refused social media altogether, and I never met a friend or family member of hers. One night, while we lay in the grass behind my house staring at stars, she whispered, "Do you think souls can split?" I assumed she meant figuratively, people not knowing who they really are. "No," she said, rolling toward me. "I mean literally. What if someone's soul fractured and part of it stayed behind?" I sat speechless. She added quietly, "Sometimes I feel like part of me isn't supposed to be here." I dismissed it as poetic language, perhaps old trauma. I didn't press her. Looking back, I should have. It was early October when it all unfolded. Evelyn had stayed late at my house, and around 11:30 p.m. she said she wanted to walk back alone. I offered to escort her halfway, but she declined. "No one's out this late," she said with a faint smile. "It's calm." I watched her fade into the distance beneath the flickering street lamp. Not even 15 minutes later, I heard a sound. Not a call, but a knock at my window. Not the front door, my bedroom window, the one facing the backyard. My heart raced. When I slid the curtain open, no one was there, yet a cold wave swept through me. I stood frozen for what felt like forever. Then my phone buzzed. A message from Evelyn. "I need you to come to the river now, please." No punctuation, just those exact words. I bolted out without changing clothes. The river wasn't far, only through the narrow wooded path behind the old community hall. I knew the way well, but that night the air was thick, unnatural. When I stepped into the clearing, moonlight shimmered strangely across the water, and there she was, Evelyn, standing beneath a tree by the bank, her head bowed, hair covering her face. "Eve," I called. Silence. I stepped closer, cautiously. She raised her head and my stomach twisted violently. It was Evelyn, but altered. Her skin was pale with a bluish tint. Her eyes glazed and lifeless, blood trickling from her mouth. I staggered backward. "Evelyn, are you okay?" She didn't move. Then, without her lips parting, I heard her voice echoing in my head. "Don't reveal me." I fainted. When I woke, I was in my bed, soaked clothes clinging to me, mud on my hands. My father sat in the kitchen reading the newspaper as though nothing unusual had happened. I checked my phone. No message from Evelyn. I tried calling, but the line was dead. I hurried to the bookstore to see if she'd shown up. Nothing. Asked around campus. No one had seen her. That entire day was dreamlike, hours slipping away. That night I dreamt of her again by the river, head lowered, whispering, "You saw too much." I filed a missing person report. The detective, Mark Dalton, listened politely but was skeptical. "Are you certain she exists?" he asked. "No phone, no address, no photographs. You said she doesn't use social media." "She's real," I insisted. "We've been together nearly 2 months." He nodded, but doubt lingered in his eyes. No one believed me. I began digging into town archives, searching for history tied to the river and that specific tree. I discovered an old newspaper from 1964. Local woman drowns after alleged possession. Witchcraft accusations denied by family. Her name was Elvira Hart. Same surname, same face. I know it sounds impossible, but the photo was printed clearly, grainy black and white though it was. The same sharp jawline, the same haunting eyes. The article said she was found nailed to a riverside tree by locals convinced she was possessed. They claimed she lured men into the woods at night, whispering to them some returned changed, some never returned. She died at 22. Evelyn was 22. I couldn't sleep for days. Then one night, near 2 a.m., the knock returned. This time it wasn't the window, it was the front door. I grabbed a flashlight and opened it. Nothing, only a single wet footprint pressed on the porch. I turned back, and there she was. Evelyn stood barefoot in the hallway, drenched, trembling, her skin as pale as moonlight. I froze, unable to speak. She stepped toward me. I tried to stop them. I tried to leave. She whispered, "Evelyn, what are you?" Tears streamed down her face. "I'm what they turned me into," she said, and then she vanished. Not running, not fading, simply gone. 7 years have passed. I left Ashbourne, got therapy, built a life in Hobart, married, started over. But some nights, I still hear that knock. One, then silence. And when I walk near rivers, I feel her presence close behind me. I never turn around because deep down I know she's still there, watching, waiting. And if I ever look back, she'll follow me home. I was the kind of kid who barely registered in high school. If I wasn't slouched in the back row of class doodling nonsense or dozing off under my hoodie, I was probably out in the parking lot wrangling shopping carts for the neighborhood grocery store just to cover my own lunches. I didn't party. I didn't have friends dragging me into trouble. I just existed. Willow Creek was the kind of town where nothing significant ever took place, mostly farmland. A sluggish river winding through and streets where folks recognized your father's name long before your own. And in the middle of that quiet backdrop was her. Her name was Lila Carrington. And to me, she was a wildfire trapped inside glass. Everyone noticed her. The teachers, the guys, even a few of the moms during school events. She wasn't just beautiful, she carried herself differently. Like she'd already lived 100 lives and was merely drifting through our school out of boredom. And me? I couldn't even meet her gaze. Over 4 years, I think I said a grand total of 0 words to her. But I watched, not in some creepy way, but the same way you sit and stare at flames on a freezing night. She was always sketching in her notebooks. I overheard once that she wanted to attend an art college out in Boston, maybe open a gallery one day. I never imagined she'd stay in a place like ours. Then the years went by, as they always do. I graduated and wound up working at a chain place called the Timberline Grill on the north side of town. I worked the line, scrubbed fryers, dragged out trash, still invisible, still a nobody, until she showed up. It was a Friday night, the restaurant buzzing, country music rattling the walls. I was behind the bar grabbing extra shifts when I saw her. Same sharp features, same almond eyes, but older now, 23, just like me. And she looked right at me. "Evan," she said. I almost dropped the pitcher in my hand. I hadn't heard my name sound like that in years. "Wow, Layla." She smiled. Not the kind you fake for strangers, but warm, even familiar. "You work here? That's crazy. You were in my class, weren't you?" Sat behind me in world history. My pulse thundered. How in the world did she remember that? Before I could reply, some guy slid into the booth beside her. Wide-shouldered, smug grin. Mark Daniels, old football captain. Another classmate. He gave me a nod like we were buddies. But I saw the way Lila leaned toward him. It stung. I took their order, traded a little small talk, then walked away. But my mind wouldn't stop spinning all night. Over the next few weeks, she returned again and again. Sometimes with Mark, sometimes with friends. But once, just once, she came alone. That was the night we really spoke. She asked about my life, about what I'd been doing. She told me she never made it to art school, said her mom had gotten sick and she had to stay. She was helping at her uncle's framing shop on Maple Drive now. We laughed about stupid teachers. She remembered my name, remembered that I liked sci-fi novels. She even asked if I still drew. I hadn't sketched in years, but I told her I did. I lied. That night, I went home, shut myself in and screamed into my pillow like I was 15 again. What was happening? A week later, she showed up again alone. No Mark. "Hey," she said, leaning against the counter. "You off soon?" Yeah. Why? "You should come over, I want to show you something." I blinked. "Like, tonight?" She smiled. "Yeah, I've got wine and something you'll like. Trust me." "Of course," I said yes. She scribbled her address somewhere off Old Mill Road near the woods, isolated but not too far. That night I showed up, nerves tearing me apart. It was a single-story place, older but neat, porch light flickering, swing squeaking in the breeze. I knocked. She opened the door, wearing a paint-stained sweatshirt and black jeans. "Evan," she said with a grin. "Come in." The first thing I noticed, the floor of the living room was covered in clear plastic sheets. I looked down and she caught my glance. "Oh, don't mind that," she said quickly. "I'm repainting tomorrow. Don't want to ruin the wood floors." "Makes sense," I muttered, but it unsettled me. The second thing I saw, the paintings. Canvases everywhere. Men in agony. Men crying, men screaming. One made me freeze. A man with Mark's exact face, eyes bulging, blood trailing from his mouth, body twisted mid-scream. "What the hell is this?" I whispered. She stepped beside me, calm as ever. "That one's called Collapse. My best so far. Can't you feel the pain?" Her voice quivered with excitement. He wouldn't stop bragging, job in Chicago, his fancy car. So I shattered his jaw with a hammer. Took forever to capture the right scream, but eventually he gave me exactly what I needed. I staggered back. "You're joking." She tilted her head. "I'm not." Her eyes were wrong, dilated, twitching like she hadn't slept in days. I edged toward the door. She chuckled, cold and soft. "You haven't even seen the others." I spun back. 4 more canvases, each of different men I'd never seen, each twisted in torment. One had spiders crawling across his face. Another was bound by ropes, limbs stretched taut. A third was plummeting midair with blades stabbed into his back. "Art," she said, "is only true when it's honest, and people are only honest when they're dying." I couldn't speak. My body locked up. She walked to the kitchen. "You know the saying, art is pain. It's not just metaphor, it's reality." When she returned, she was carrying a frozen medieval mace, the kind you'd see behind museum glass. "Evan," she said, voice sweet as honey, "it's your turn. I've been planning your piece for days." I ran. She swung the mace, barely missing my skull. It smashed into the doorframe, splintering wood. I crashed through the doorway, slipped on the porch plastic and rolled down the steps. She screamed after me, "Come back. I haven't finished your portrait." I bolted into the night, sprinting until I hit the main road. With trembling hands, I called the police. They raided her place the next morning. Found blood in the tub, a locked freezer in the garage holding 4 bodies. One confirmed as Mark Daniels, beaten to death with a hammer. The other 3, drifters, out-of-towners, nameless. Each canvas matched a corpse. She was arrested, charged with 4 counts of first-degree murder, sentenced to life without parole. I stayed in bed for a week after. Didn't speak to anyone. Sometimes I replay that night, how close it was. If I'd tripped on the plastic, if I'd struggled with that damn lock even a second longer, I'd be hanging on her wall, a masterpiece, but not in any way worth being remembered. And I never draw anymore. Not since then. I don't want to imagine what waits behind the frame. I always thought the worst betrayal in a relationship was lying or being unfaithful. That was what I believed until I crossed paths with Marissa. It didn't begin as frightening. Honestly, it felt like one of the happiest chapters of my life. I had just relocated to Rainfield after dropping out of college in Corvallis. I was 19, drained, uncertain of my path, and crashing at my cousin's apartment while hunting for work. His name was Caleb, and he was the one who introduced us. "She's a friend of a friend," Caleb said while we waited in line outside a bar that didn't bother to check IDs. Chill, sharp, a little strange, but in that magnetic way. I was instantly drawn in. I hadn't dated in nearly a year. I still carried wounds from my last relationship and figured I'd never be able to connect with anyone again. Then I saw her. Marissa wasn't the kind of girl who made heads turn in a crowd. She wasn't loud or dressed to impress, but she had this still intensity. Deep amber eyes, dark hair tied in a messy knot, a leather jacket layered over a washed-out sea and the Banshee's tee. She looked like she carried secrets, and I wanted to unravel them all. We clicked fast. Too fast. She laughed at things I said. She listened in a way no one else ever had. I told her things I'd never confessed to anyone, not even Caleb. Within 2 weeks, we were practically inseparable, and I was staying at her place most nights. Her apartment was an old third-floor corner unit in the Hawthorne Heights neighborhood, the kind of building with squeaky floorboards and cracked paint that felt more like character than decay. At first, it felt like paradise, but Marissa had routines, strange ones. Every Sunday, she'd visit this tiny shop on Ashford Street called the Moon's Root. They sold crystals, herbs, odd candles, and books with titles like The Crimson Veil, Binding Paths, and The Vessel of Will. I figured it was just quirky New Age stuff like half the girls in Rainfield were into. She never pushed it on me. Not directly. But the more time we spent together, the deeper I slid into her world. She disliked mirrors, made me cover mine when I moved in, claiming they trapped energy. She loathed loud music, so I stopped playing it. She burned dark candles and sage, murmuring softly to them. Some nights she stayed awake, scribbling in a thick leather journal filled with markings I didn't understand. Still, I stayed. I told myself it was harmless, just art. That's what love does. It makes you excuse what should send you running. About 2 months in, she asked me to dye my hair black. I laughed, assuming it was a joke. It wasn't. "You'll feel more aligned," she said. I had no idea what she meant, but I wanted her happy, so I did it. Then she wanted me to grow a beard, said it would ground me. Next came the clothes. Heavy, layered, dark, strange amulets she crafted and made me wear. Piece by piece, I became someone else. Even my voice shifted, slower, quieter. Not because she told me to, but because she looked at me differently when I spoke that way. Caleb noticed first. "Man, you good?" he asked over coffee one night. "You look like you haven't slept in forever and your vibe's just off." I brushed him off. But somewhere deep down, I knew something wasn't right. The worst part was I didn't care. One rainy Tuesday night, Caleb came by unexpectedly. I hadn't seen him in months. Marissa said he gave her unsettling feelings, so I stopped inviting him, but there he was, dripping wet in the hallway. "You never answered my texts," he said. "I thought you moved or something." Marissa wasn't home. I let him in. "Want coffee?" I asked. He blinked. "Since when do you drink coffee? You always hated hot drinks." I ignored it, boiled water, and we talked awkwardly. I didn't know how to explain the emptiness inside me, like I was present but not really living. At some point, Caleb asked to use the bathroom. He was gone for 10 minutes. When he came back, his face was pale. "Evan," he whispered, "what's in that room with the red curtain?" My stomach dropped. "That room's private," I muttered. His eyes locked on mine. I saw it. He described it perfectly. A massive red pentagram across the wood floor, black candles at each point, a bowl filled with ash and what looked like teeth, and something in the center, what he called a stone altar. My hands trembled. "She told me never to go in there," I said. "You've never seen it?" he asked. I shook my head. That's when Marissa walked in. She didn't scream, didn't even look surprised. She stared at Caleb as if she had been waiting. "You weren't invited," she said calmly. Caleb stood firm. "You've been changing him. He's not himself." She smiled. "He's more himself than he's ever been." Then she turned to me. "Don't listen. He wants to break the circle." Her voice, low, commanding, unnatural, snapped something inside me. I looked at Caleb, then at her, and bolted. We didn't make it far. The front door wouldn't budge, no matter how hard we pulled. Marissa stood at the end of the hallway, arms spread, eyes pitch black. I felt it then, a crushing pressure in my skull, as if my thoughts were being pressed into dust. Caleb snatched a candle from a table and flung it at her. It smashed against the wall. "Get to the circle room," he shouted. We raced in and slammed the door shut. I stood in the center of the pentagram, trembling. That's when I felt a burn in my chest, sharp and violent, as though something inside me wanted out. "Evan," Caleb said, "she's anchoring something in you through this room." I collapsed, gasping. From outside, Marissa screamed, "Let him finish. He belongs to me now." Caleb shoved a heavy bookshelf against the door. He looked at me. "We have to break the circle," her voice echoed. "Exactly. You think she cares what happens to you?" I ripped a piece of fabric from my shirt and dragged it across one of the red lines. Instantly the air shifted. Every candle extinguished at once. The burning vanished. Then came a scream. Not hers, not human. When we opened the door, Marissa was gone. I didn't sleep that night. Neither did Caleb. He dragged me to a church the next morning. The priest didn't seem shocked. He just asked if I felt whole again. I told him I wasn't sure what whole even felt like anymore. A few days later, I went back to gather my things. The apartment was empty. No trace of her. The circle room was scrubbed clean, painted over as if it never existed. 2 years have passed. I moved back to Corvallis. I don't keep candles at home anymore. I cover mirrors after dark. Sometimes I still feel that flicker in my chest, like a spark waiting to ignite, but it fades. Caleb and I rarely talk about it. I searched for Marissa online. Nothing. No records, no profiles. The landlord even swore the unit had been vacant for months before I moved in. But I remember her every night. Sometimes I dream of that room, of her voice whispering in a language I cannot understand. And each time I wake, I dread looking in the mirror, convinced one day I'll see her standing behind me, smiling.